On March 15, 1982, Miguel Ramirez was serving 18 months at Riverside County Correctional Facility for a minor drug possession charge. But when his sister Maria came to visit him 3 weeks later, the guards told her he wasn't there. He had vanished from prison records in 1982, but no one cared because he was Latino. For over 4 decades, the Ramirez family has been searching for answers to a question that should never exist. How does a man disappear from inside a maximum security prison, and why did no one seem interested in finding out what happened? Miguel Alejandro Ramirez was 24 years old when he entered Riverside County Correctional Facility on February 22, 1982. According to intake records that still exist today, he was processed at 2:30 p.m., assigned inmate number RCC 8247, and placed in Block C, Cell 14. The conviction was straightforward: possession of marijuana with intent to distribute, his first serious offense. His family expected him home by Christmas. Miguel was the youngest of 5 children, born to Roberto and Carmen Ramirez, who had immigrated from Guadalajara in 1955. His sister Maria remembers him as the family comedian, always making everyone laugh even during the hardest times. He had this smile, she tells investigators years later, that could light up a room. Even when he got in trouble, you couldn't stay mad at him. Prison records show Miguel was assigned to kitchen duty within his first week. Fellow inmates later described him as quiet, keeping to himself, writing letters to his family every few days. He had no disciplinary infractions, no conflicts with other prisoners, nothing that would mark him as a problem. The last confirmed sighting of Miguel Ramirez was during the 6 p.m. head count on March 13, 1982. Corrections Officer James Patterson later told investigators he specifically remembered checking Miguel's cell that evening because Miguel had asked about mail delivery times. He seemed normal, Patterson recalled, maybe a little anxious to hear from home, but nothing unusual. Maria Ramirez made the 2-hour drive from Los Angeles to Riverside every other Sunday, bringing homemade tamales and news from the neighborhood. March 14, 1982, was a visiting day, but Miguel didn't appear in the visitation room. When Maria asked the guard at the front desk, she was told there was some kind of mix-up with the scheduling. "Come back next week," the guard told her. "We'll get it sorted out." But when Maria returned on March 28th, the response was different. The same guard looked at her with confusion when she asked for Miguel Ramirez, inmate number RCC 82247. He disappeared into the back office for nearly an hour before returning with a supervisor. "Ma'am, we don't have any record of a Miguel Ramirez being housed here," the supervisor informed her. "Are you sure you have the right facility?" Maria felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She had the intake paperwork, the visiting schedule, letters from Miguel with the prison's return address. She had been visiting him for 4 weeks. How could they have no record? When Maria contacted the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, she encountered the first of many walls she would hit over the next 40 years. The desk sergeant took her information, but seemed skeptical of her story. "A man doesn't just disappear from prison," he told her. "There must be some administrative error." The prison's internal investigation lasted exactly 3 days. According to the brief report filed on April 2, 1982, officials claimed there was a clerical error in the original documentation. They suggested Miguel Ramirez may have been transferred to another facility, though they could provide no record of such a transfer. When pressed for more details, officials cited privacy regulations and closed the investigation. Maria hired attorney Robert Chen with the small savings her family had managed to accumulate. Chen's investigation revealed disturbing inconsistencies in the prison story. The original intake documentation was legitimate. Miguel had definitely been processed into Riverside County Correctional Facility. Kitchen duty rosters showed his name through March 10th, but the entries stopped abruptly with no explanation. Most troubling was the discovery that Miguel's cell had been completely cleaned and repainted within 48 hours of his last confirmed sighting. When Chen asked why, officials claimed it was part of routine maintenance, but maintenance records showed no other cells in Block C had been painted that month. Word spread quickly through East LA's tight-knit Latino community. Miguel's disappearance became a rallying point for families who felt invisible to law enforcement. Community activist Rosa Martinez organized protests outside the prison, demanding answers and accountability. "Miguel could have been any of our sons," Martinez said at a press conference in April 1982. "But because he was brown, because he was poor, because he was in prison, they think his life doesn't matter. We're here to say it does matter." The protests drew media attention, but coverage was limited and often dismissive. Local news reports focused more on the disruption caused by protesters than on the mystery of Miguel's disappearance. The story never gained traction beyond regional Spanish-language media. Meanwhile, the Ramirez family launched their own search. Roberto Ramirez, despite his limited English, contacted every prison facility in California, Nevada, and Arizona, asking if they had any record of his son. Carmen Ramirez made daily phone calls to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department until they stopped taking her calls. As weeks turned to months, several theories emerged about what might have happened to Miguel Ramirez. Each theory raised more questions than it answered. Theory 1. Administrative transfer. Prison officials initially suggested Miguel had been transferred to another facility due to overcrowding, but no paperwork existed to support this claim. Transfer records from that period show detailed documentation for every other inmate movement, making Miguel's alleged transfer highly unusual. Theory 2. Early release. Some officials hinted that Miguel might have been released early for good behavior, but this theory crumbled under scrutiny. Good behavior releases required extensive documentation and family notification, none of which existed in Miguel's case. Theory 3. Escape. The most damaging theory suggested Miguel had somehow escaped from prison. This narrative was quietly encouraged by officials who seemed eager to blame Miguel rather than investigate the system failure. However, no escape protocols were implemented, no manhunt was organized, and no alerts were issued to other law enforcement agencies. Theory 4. Foul play. The theory that gained the most support from Miguel's family and community advocates was that something violent had happened inside the prison, and officials were covering it up. The rapid cleaning of Miguel's cell, the destruction of records, and the lack of transparency all pointed to an institutional cover-up. The case of Miguel Ramirez represents a 40-year journey through bureaucratic indifference, systemic racism, and family determination. What should have been a straightforward missing person investigation became a David and Goliath battle against institutions that seemed determined to make Miguel disappear twice, first in person, then from memory. Robert Chen filed multiple lawsuits demanding access to prison records. Each lawsuit was met with claims of privacy concerns, ongoing investigations, or administrative privilege. Chen estimates he filed over 200 public records requests during this period, receiving heavily redacted documents or outright denials. The breakthrough came in 1984 when a corrections officer named Thomas Mitchell approached Chen privately. Mitchell, who had worked at Riverside County Correctional Facility during Miguel's incarceration, claimed there had been a serious incident involving Miguel, but he was afraid to speak officially for fear of losing his job. According to Mitchell's account, given in a secretly recorded conversation, Miguel had witnessed something he shouldn't have seen, possibly guard brutality against another inmate. Mitchell suggested Miguel might have been moved to protect him, but the movement went wrong somehow. "All I know is one day he was there and the next day we were told to forget he ever existed," Mitchell told Chen. "The warden made it real clear that anyone who talked about it would be looking for a new job." Chen's persistent legal challenges eventually caught the attention of the FBI's Civil Rights Division. Agent Patricia Williams was assigned to investigate potential civil rights violations in Miguel's disappearance. Williams' investigation revealed a pattern of problems at Riverside County Correctional Facility during the early 1980s. 3 other inmates had died under suspicious circumstances between 1980 and 1982, and there were multiple allegations of guard brutality that had been internally investigated and dismissed. The FBI investigation stalled when key witnesses began recanting their statements. Thomas Mitchell claimed he had been mistaken about Miguel and said his earlier statements were based on rumors. Other guards who had initially cooperated suddenly became unavailable or claimed memory problems. Williams later admitted to Chen that she believed there had been a coordinated effort to obstruct the federal investigation. "Someone was protecting something," she said years later, "but we couldn't prove what or who." As the 1990s began, interest in Miguel's case waned. Roberto Ramirez died in 1993, never knowing what happened to his youngest son. Carmen Ramirez continued her daily prayers and weekly phone calls to various law enforcement agencies, but responses became increasingly rare. During this period, the case gained an unexpected ally in Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a criminology professor at UC Riverside, who was researching prison conditions in the 1980s. Martinez became fascinated by Miguel's case while reviewing historical records for her dissertation. Martinez's academic investigation uncovered additional evidence that officials had tried to erase Miguel from prison records. She found budget documents showing that Riverside County Correctional Facility had purchased unusual amounts of cleaning supplies and paint in March 1982, far exceeding normal maintenance schedules. More significantly, Martinez discovered that Block C, where Miguel had been housed, was the same block where inmate Carlos Fuentes had died under suspicious circumstances just 6 weeks before Miguel's disappearance. Fuentes' death had been ruled a suicide, but his family had disputed the finding, claiming evidence of assault. The year 2000 brought new hope in the form of advancing technology and changing attitudes toward cold cases. DNA analysis was becoming standard in criminal investigations, and digital record-keeping was making it harder for documents to simply disappear. Maria Ramirez, now in her 50s, partnered with the newly formed Coalition for Prison Transparency to demand a fresh investigation into her brother's disappearance. The coalition, led by civil rights attorney David Harrison, had successfully forced investigations into several historical prison incidents. Harrison's team approached the case with modern investigative techniques. They used Freedom of Information Act requests to obtain personnel records for guards who had worked at Riverside County Correctional Facility in 1982. They tracked down former inmates who had been housed in Block C during Miguel's incarceration. The most significant breakthrough came when investigators located former inmate William Torres, who had been Miguel's cellmate for the final week of Miguel's documented presence at the facility. Torres, now living in Nevada and working as a construction foreman, had never been interviewed by any official investigation. Torres's account was explosive. According to his statement, given in 2001, Miguel had indeed witnessed a brutal assault on Carlos Fuentes by 3 corrections officers. Miguel had told Torres he was afraid because one of the guards had threatened him directly, warning him to forget what he saw or end up like his friend. Torres said Miguel had been moved to protective custody 2 days before his disappearance, but he never saw him again after that. "They told us he got transferred," Torres remembered. "But transfers don't happen in the middle of the night with no paperwork." Armed with Torres's testimony, Harrison's team pressed for a grand jury investigation. The pressure finally forced current Riverside County officials to conduct a comprehensive review of their historical records. The review, completed in 2003, acknowledged that significant irregularities existed in the documentation of Miguel Ramirez's incarceration. Officials admitted that proper transfer protocols had not been followed, and that some records from that period had been inadvertently destroyed during a computer system upgrade in 1987. However, the review stopped short of admitting wrongdoing or addressing the possibility of foul play. County officials maintained that while mistakes were made, there was no evidence of criminal activity. The investigation took a dramatic turn in 2004 when former corrections officer Thomas Mitchell, now retired and battling cancer, decided to tell his full story. In a deathbed confession recorded by Harrison's team, Mitchell revealed details that had been hidden for over 20 years. According to Mitchell, Miguel had not just witnessed the assault on Carlos Fuentes, he had tried to intervene. When guards began beating Fuentes, Miguel had shouted for help and tried to alert other inmates. This intervention had marked him as a problem that needed to be solved permanently. Mitchell claimed that Miguel had been taken to an unused section of the prison on the night of March 13, 1982, under the pretext of moving him to protective custody. What happened next, Mitchell said, was covered up by a conspiracy involving at least 6 guards and 2 supervisors. They didn't mean for it to go as far as it did, Mitchell claimed in his confession, but once it happened, they had to make it look like he was never there. They cleaned everything, destroyed the records, and threatened anyone who might talk. The 2010s brought unprecedented tools for investigating cold cases. Advanced DNA analysis could now extract genetic information from minute samples, and digital forensics could recover data from supposedly destroyed computer systems. In 2012, investigators obtained a court order to search for any remaining physical evidence from Miguel's incarceration. While most of his personal effects had been destroyed or lost, they discovered a single envelope containing hair samples that had been taken during his processing in 1982. DNA analysis of the hair samples confirmed Miguel's identity and provided a genetic profile that could be compared to unidentified remains throughout the Southwest. The search through missing persons databases yielded no matches, suggesting that Miguel's body had never been found or had been destroyed completely. The digital investigation proved more promising. Computer forensics experts working with the FBI were able to recover fragments of data from backup tapes that Riverside County claimed had been destroyed. These fragments included partial personnel schedules and incident reports from March 1982. The recovered data showed that 8 corrections officers had called in sick or taken emergency leave in the days immediately following Miguel's disappearance, an unusually high number that suggested coordinated action. More telling was the discovery that the warden had held 3 emergency meetings with senior staff during the same period, meetings that were not reflected in official logs. In 2018, the case received renewed attention when the Los Angeles Times published a comprehensive investigation into historical civil rights violations at California prisons. Miguel's story was featured prominently, sparking public outrage and political pressure for accountability. The article led to the formation of a special task force within the California Attorney General's office, specifically focused on investigating historical prison incidents. The task force, led by Deputy Attorney General Lisa Thompson, has broader authority and resources than previous investigations. Thompson's team has conducted interviews with over 40 former corrections officers, inmates, and officials who worked at Riverside County Correctional Facility during the 1980s. Several witnesses who had previously remained silent have come forward with information that corroborates the cover-up theory. In 2019, investigators made a significant discovery when they located Anthony Rodriguez, a former maintenance worker at the prison who had been too afraid to speak for decades. Rodriguez revealed that he had been ordered to dispose of medical waste from Block C in the early morning hours of March 14, 1982. "They told me it was contaminated materials from the infirmary," Rodriguez said in his statement. "But I'd never seen medical waste that heavy before, and they made me sign papers saying I would never talk about what I disposed of." Rodriguez had been required to drive the sealed containers to a specific industrial incinerator facility, where they were destroyed without being opened or examined. The paperwork for this disposal, which Rodriguez had kept for nearly 40 years, shows signatures from prison officials who had previously denied any knowledge of unusual activities during that period. Today, the case remains active with the California Attorney General's Special Task Force on Historical Prison Incidents. The investigation has been elevated to a potential homicide inquiry, marking the first time in 40 years that officials have acknowledged Miguel Ramirez may have been murdered. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Thompson's team now includes FBI forensic specialists, digital crime analysts, and civil rights investigators. They have secured funding for a comprehensive investigation that could last several more years, representing the most thorough official inquiry into Miguel's disappearance since 1982. The task force has issued immunity offers to any former corrections officers willing to provide information about Miguel's case. While no one has come forward publicly, sources close to the investigation suggest that several former employees have provided confidential statements that could lead to criminal charges. Maria Ramirez is now 73 years old, a grandmother of 8, who has spent more than half her life searching for answers about her brother's fate. She still lives in the same East Los Angeles neighborhood where she grew up, in a house filled with photos of Miguel and newspaper clippings about his case. "I never married," Maria says, sitting in her living room beneath a shrine dedicated to Miguel's memory. "I couldn't start a family of my own when I didn't know what happened to the family I already had. Miguel was supposed to be the one who gave my parents grandchildren. Instead, he became our ghost." Maria has become a reluctant activist, working with families of other missing inmates and speaking at conferences about prison reform. She estimates she has driven over 100,000 miles visiting prisons, courthouses, and government offices in her search for Miguel. Carmen Ramirez passed away in 2015 at the age of 91, never learning what happened to her youngest son. Maria says her mother's final words were a request to keep looking for Miguel until the truth was found. The extended Ramirez family includes cousins, nieces, and nephews who never met Miguel but have grown up knowing his story. Several have become lawyers, social workers, and police officers, inspired by their family's long fight for justice. Miguel's disappearance has had lasting effects on Latino communities throughout Southern California. His case has become a symbol of systemic indifference toward Latino lives and has inspired decades of activism around prison reform and civil rights. The Coalition for Prison Transparency, formed partly in response to Miguel's case, has successfully advocated for legislation requiring better documentation of inmate transfers and deaths. They have also pushed for independent oversight of prison investigations and improved access to records for families seeking information about loved ones. In Riverside County, Miguel's case has contributed to major reforms in how the correctional system operates. Current Sheriff Chad Bianco has acknowledged the failures of previous administrations and has pledged full cooperation with ongoing investigations. "The Ramirez family deserves answers," Sheriff Bianco said in a recent statement. "Whatever happened in 1982, it was unacceptable, and we will do everything possible to support the current investigation and prevent such incidents from ever happening again." The search for answers continues through multiple channels. The Attorney General's task force represents the official investigation, but independent efforts have also yielded important discoveries. True crime podcasts have featured Miguel's story, generating thousands of tips and leads. Social media groups dedicated to his case have connected witnesses and family members who had never spoken before. Amateur investigators have used modern mapping technology to identify potential burial sites and disposal locations. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, now a professor emeritus at UC Riverside, continues her academic research into Miguel's case. Her recent work has focused on pattern analysis, comparing Miguel's disappearance to similar incidents at other California prisons during the same period. Martinez's research has identified at least 12 other Latino inmates who vanished from California prisons between 1980 and 1985 under suspicious circumstances. While not all cases show the same level of evidence tampering as Miguel's, the pattern suggests systemic problems that extended far beyond Riverside County. Current investigators are specifically seeking information from several categories of potential witnesses. Anyone who worked at Riverside County Correctional Facility between 1980 and 1985, particularly guards, maintenance staff, medical personnel, and administrative workers, is encouraged to come forward with any information about unusual incidents or cover-ups. Former inmates who were housed at the facility during Miguel's incarceration may have witnessed events or conversations that seemed unimportant at the time but could provide crucial context today. Family members of corrections officers who worked at the facility during that period might have heard conversations at home or noticed changes in behavior that could indicate involvement in or knowledge of the cover-up. Industrial waste disposal workers who handled materials from Riverside County facilities in March 1982 could provide information about unusual disposal requests or suspicious materials. Advances in forensic science continue to offer new possibilities for solving Miguel's case. Ground-penetrating radar technology could identify buried remains at locations identified through witness statements or historical records. Improved DNA analysis techniques might be able to extract genetic information from clothing fibers or other trace evidence that was considered unusable in previous decades. Digital forensics continues to recover additional data fragments from supposedly destroyed computer systems. Most promising is the development of familial DNA matching, which could identify Miguel's remains even if they were found in circumstances where direct identification would be impossible. The Ramirez family has provided DNA samples to multiple databases, hoping for a match that could finally bring Miguel home. Miguel's case has implications that extend far beyond one family's search for closure. It represents a window into systemic failures that allowed the abuse and murder of vulnerable individuals to be covered up for decades. The case has influenced criminal justice reform efforts, highlighting the need for independent oversight of prison systems and stronger protections for inmates who witness wrongdoing. It has also demonstrated the importance of community advocacy in cases where official investigations fail. For the Latino community, Miguel's story has become a rallying point for broader discussions about equal treatment under the law and the value placed on Latino lives by law enforcement and correctional systems. In November 2024, investigators received what could be the most significant lead in the case's 40-year history. A construction crew working on renovations at the former Riverside County Correctional Facility site discovered a sealed section of concrete that appeared to have been poured hastily in March 1982. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the concrete, consistent with buried organic material. While excavation is still pending court approval, investigators are cautiously optimistic that they may finally have found Miguel's remains. The discovery has renewed hope for Maria Ramirez and the extended family. "Maybe we can finally bring Miguel home," Maria said when informed of the finding. "Maybe he can finally rest in peace, and maybe we can finally have closure." Today, the case remains active with the California Attorney General's Special Task Force on Historical Prison Incidents. Anyone with information about Miguel Ramirez's disappearance is urged to contact the task force hotline at 1-800-952-5225 or submit anonymous tips through their website. The Ramirez family has established a $50,000 reward for information, leading to the identification and prosecution of those responsible for Miguel's disappearance. The reward is funded through donations from community supporters and civil rights organizations. Sheriff Chad Bianco has emphasized that the current Riverside County Sheriff's Department is committed to uncovering the truth, regardless of how it reflects on previous administrations. "We cannot change what happened in 1982, Bianco said, but we can ensure that the truth is finally revealed and that justice is served." After 4 decades of searching, there are reasons for cautious optimism. The current investigation has more resources, better technology, and stronger legal authority than any previous effort. Witnesses who were afraid to speak in previous decades are now coming forward with information. Most importantly, there is a growing recognition that Miguel Ramirez's life mattered, that his disappearance was not acceptable, and that his family deserves answers. The indifference that allowed his case to be ignored for so many years has been replaced by determination to uncover the truth. As Deputy Attorney General Lisa Thompson recently stated, "Every person deserves to be counted, to be remembered, and to have their fate known by those who love them." Miguel Ramirez was someone's son, someone's brother, someone's hope for the future. We will not rest until we can tell his family what happened to him. The investigation continues, driven by the belief that truth has no expiration date and justice can still be served, even after 40 years of delay. For Maria Ramirez and the thousands of supporters who have joined her cause, the search for answers represents more than solving one case. It represents the principle that every life has value and every family deserves closure. Miguel Ramirez vanished from prison records in 1982, but he has never been forgotten. His case stands as a testament to the power of family love, community determination, and the enduring belief that someday, somehow, the truth will emerge from the shadows where it has hidden for far too long. And the search for answers continues and hope never dies. If unsolved mysteries like this fascinate you, stories of institutional cover-ups, families who never stop searching, and the belief that truth will eventually surface, then you're exactly where you belong. Hit that like button if this story moved you and you believe answers are still out there. Subscribe to join our growing community of viewers who refuse to let these cases be forgotten, and share this with someone who might hold a piece of the puzzle. Do you have information about Miguel Ramirez's disappearance? Don't hesitate to contact the California Attorney General's Special Task Force at 1-800-952-5225. Even the smallest detail could be the breakthrough investigators need. What unsolved mystery should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, the search for answers continues and every case deserves to be solved. If you or someone you know has information about Miguel Ramirez's disappearance from Riverside County Correctional Facility in March 1982, please contact the California Attorney General's Special Task Force on Historical Prison Incidents at 1-800-952-5225 or submit an anonymous tip at their website. Your call could bring a family the answers they've been waiting for over 40 years.